One of my favorite things in the world to do is watch Friends. I know it's been off for years and years. It's not even around, but I still find myself binge watching old episodes. And I was thinking about this today and thinking, it's the predictability of the friends in the circle, right? You have Chandler with his quirkiness, Monica with her type A of just everything has to be so neat and tidy and organized. It's Phoebe's ability to make you laugh at her silly songs. Ross always comes in with those smart comments, and Joey and him and his food, like it is just so hilarious. And of course, Rachel, she just brings everybody together, and it's just such this beautiful, cohesive team of people. And it's why I wanted to come on and share with you today that I have an opportunity for you to find your friends in the content creation space. So if you are thinking about creating your first or your next digital course, I don't want you to miss this opportunity because Amy Porterfield just opened the doors for registration for her Course Confident Bootcamp. And I'm actually offering a special bonus for anyone that registers for the Course Confident Bootcamp through my special link. So I want you to go to krystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register. That's krystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And what you're going to find when you get there is I have this special bonus private podcast series. It's called Money Mindset for Creators. So I want you to go register for Amy's bootcamp, download the podcast, and immediately start listening to it, because what this training is set up to do is to help you get your mind right about monetizing your content, making money so that you can fuel your content creation dreams. So go to krystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register for Course Confident. And I cannot wait for you to find your friends and find the people that will be there for you. Do you see what I did there? Yeah, nice little friends segue connection. Go to krystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And I cannot wait to see you inside. Okay, let's get into today's episode. I have got such a special treat for you today. If you are a professional business owner, if you are someone that is looking to attract clients on LinkedIn, listen up, because this is the episode, the masterclass in LinkedIn that you've been looking for. And I mean, this episode did not turn out at all how I expected it to. It's so much better because today I sat down and chatted with Nichole Williamson, who is a branding and digital marketing expert currently serving as the Chief Brand Officer at Zilker Media. This is an end-to-end marketing solution for busy entrepreneurs and executives, helping them maximize their long-term success, performance, and time. And so, like I said earlier, Nichole has spearheaded her clients' LinkedIn strategies to elevate their personal thought leadership and leverage their expertise to drive awareness for their business and campaign concepts to drive lead generation. There were so many nuggets in this interview. We talked about branding. We talked about marketing. We talked about Jon Acuff. We talked about the book that I have mentioned here more than any other book. And if you're a longtime listener, you know what the title is. I'm not going to spoil it for you. You already know. You already know what it is. Her company helped to launch that book. I'm so excited for you to hear this. It was such a great interview. Nichole was so down to earth, and it's just so fun and so special to me when I meet fellow marketing nerds and people that love to talk about branding, because I could legitimately talk to them for hours and hours on end, but I just cannot wait for you to dive into this episode. So let's get right to it. Welcome to the Profit Podcast, where we teach you how to start, launch, and market your content with confidence. I'm your host, Krystal Profit, and I'm so excited that you're here. Thanks for hanging out with me today, because if you've been trying to figure out the world of content creation, this is the show that will help be your time-saving shortcut. So let's get right to it, shall we? All right, Profit Podcast listeners, I'm so excited to introduce to you to Nichole. So welcome to the show, Nichole. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Yes, this is super fun. So I love what you do. Like you kind of have like a dream job. I'm not going to lie,
Yeah.
like chief brand officer. Yeah, I hear you. You're just like, yeah, I do.
I love
So
it.
tell me like, what is it about marketing or branding or media? Like, tell me the reason why you love what you're doing in your position today.
Yeah, I love that question. I don't know if anyone's really asked me that before. I think the biggest thing of that is just the people side of getting to work with people to help them build communities with people. And I know that sounds so basic, but it's just such a fun part of this relationship building and helping people really establish who they are and how that comes across online and everything that they do, just building that cohesiveness and consistency. So yeah, I feel very fortunate. It's been just a blast. And I have a really incredible team that I work with, and then our clients are fantastic. So it's like I said, I'm very fortunate in that.
Yeah. Did you start your career in marketing and media, or did you kind of make like a pivot along the way? Like, just, I don't know. I love to know like the little moments because there's a lot of people, in our audience that maybe what they're doing right now, like they're starting a podcast, they're starting
Right.
to create content and they're like, this is weird. This is not what was
Right.
on. I didn't say I wanted to be a podcaster when I was a little girl. Like it's just kind of
Yeah.
this weird thing. So did you have any moments like that in your journey where you made some, big pivots or big changes?
Yeah, so I went to the University of Texas at Austin, diehard Longhorn. And I studied social media was part of the track that I did while I was there and took some courses. And it was kind of new, like that was starting to roll out. They were starting to have more classes about it. And I loved it. I had done some fundraising back in high school through social media and just saw how really Facebook back then just blew up that whole campaign. It was awesome. And we raised over 60 grand just from a Facebook effort and getting the word out. I was like, social media gets a bad rep on a lot of things, but it can be used for good. And I loved that. I loved the communities that it built and the impact it could have. And so I went to school and studied that, came out of school, kind of took a small, just like marketing sales job, to get started. And then I went into politics for a little bit and did marketing on that side for campaigns. And then I've been at Zilker 6 years this year, which is fantastic. So
oh, that's so interesting. I have to go back to the political stuff and ask,
okay.
was there something like really interesting that is, I guess, done? Because I would imagine that's like typical, paid ads for TV and radio and billboards and signs, like a lot of like traditional campaigns. Like, did you bring that over to what you were doing at Zilker? Or is it something that you're like, I didn't really learn too much that I translated, or has it all been kind of like a stepping stone?
No, I learned a lot in the political space. So I actually was focused on digital when I did that.
Okay. Yeah.
So I didn't do much of the traditional media. We had partners who did that and the mailers and all that stuff. I was focused on social and writing and email marketing. So I learned so much, so fast paced.
I can imagine.
Ever changing landscape, but while, I knew that wasn't forever, I really did love that side of it and just the digital side, and knew that was the piece that I really wanted to keep. And the Zilker team, brought me in as a kind of a founding team member when they launched. April 1st is Zilker's 6-year anniversary. So I came in October on the digital team. So I've loved it. It's been such a great journey to get to that point.
That's so fun. I'm imagining like all the movies where you see where there's like a political campaign and everybody is like just pounding coffees and like just running back. Like no one's ever walking. Like they are just running back and forth.
Of that. Yeah, there's definitely seasons of that, especially on the campaign side, leading right up to it. It's chaos. But when you're in your 20s, it's the time to do it. So if anyone's
Yeah.
interested in politics, I recommend doing it early and young when you don't need a lot of sleep and you can eat bad food and it not make a difference. So
Yes.
you could just move through life really quick. But, yeah, I really did. I learned so much, and just on the ability of how to communicate and capture different voices for different people and different organizations. And, all of that has played a huge role in everything that I've done to this point.
Oh, this is so interesting. And I feel like you're the perfect person, because I want to pick your brain for a second, because I know that there's people listening. Like we have brand new podcasters. We have people that are thinking about starting on YouTube or blogging, and they're just looking at content as a way to either be the top of the funnel for their business, or a way to, build a brand in a place where maybe they've never been online before.
Sure.
And so I'd be curious, like, what's something that you've learned along the way? You talked about building communities and really, engaging with people through a platform. Is there any advice that you would give to someone that's just starting out? Like, they are brand new.
Yeah.
Maybe they're coming from a corporate. They're like, I barely even know how to use my Instagram, but here I go. I'm going to start this thing. Do you have any advice for them?
I would say two things. The first and foremost is be authentic to who you are and what you're passionate about, what impact you want to have. If you're coming out trying to just replicate what you see and what you think is going to generate results, it's probably not going to generate those results for you, because it may not be authentic to who you are. And it's so easy when like trends happen, you see this with TikTok and Instagram Reels. They're like, oh, well, I saw such and such do this dance and it blew up. And I'm like, that's great. That probably makes sense for that person. But does that make sense for you trying to drive leads as an executive at this corporation? Probably not. It's probably not going to hit the target audience that you want. And then on top of that, the second piece I would say is, don't feel like you have to be on every channel. Understand where your audience is at, and then go to them. So, if you're this executive, which is who we do a lot of work with, a lot of them ask like, well, I should be on TikTok, right? This is the big thing. And I'm like, well, who are you targeting? Because if you're not targeting the Gen Z or the kind of that edge millennial, they're probably not there. If you're trying to maybe work with other executives or people who've been in the industry a long time, that's not where they're at. They're on LinkedIn. So that's where you should really spend your time and focus. So that's where I see people get the most overwhelmed. They're like, I've got to be on everything right now. We have to do everything. And if you start that way, it will never be sustaining, and you'll quit because it's too much.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And that's like the message that we just keep preaching around here, because it's just, we see it so often. I mean, I don't know how often you see it where people come in and they just have like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. They're like, I'm going to do it all. And you're like, okay, hang on. Let's come back down to reality for a second, because it's just so overwhelming. And I see people burn out so fast whenever they just try to take it all on. And I'm thinking about like all the different platforms. I mean, especially if you've been in digital media for a long time, then you have seen platforms come, go, like you said, viral trends, all the things. And I have to ask because I know the answer to this question, but I want to hear your answer to this question. What do you think about word of mouth marketing?
Being a woman in business comes with its own unique set of challenges, but also so many opportunities. We get ahead by leaning in to what makes us different from business as usual. I'm Samantha Hartley, host of Profitable Joyful Consulting, inviting you to a special 6-episode series exploring the experience of being a woman in business. You want to hear from women consultants who've hit $1 million, who sell 6-figure engagements, or who've broken their own revenue ceilings? Yeah, those are my clients, and they'll be sharing too. Join me for 6 must-listen episodes that tackle key challenges for women consultants. Follow Profitable Joyful Consulting on your favorite podcast app.
Yeah, I mean, word of mouth and referrals and all of those pieces are still really important. We still see that be a huge generator for many companies. Even for ourselves, we see a lot of word of mouth and referrals just from their experience of working with Zilker and our team. It's what you do after that. Like, how are you taking and utilizing it? Or are you giving them a platform? So like podcasting, we see this be such a great tool, or interview series in general, where you have a great client relationship. Bring them on to talk about what that looks like and how the results that they've seen, and give them that platform to speak to that. Or use it as a lead gen tool, which I'm happy to talk about too. But I still see word of mouth drive so much. You are we share and do all these things, but you still sit down at a dinner table and you might be like, hey, I went to this doctor, and that's who you call. You don't just like scroll, you ask for referrals, you ask your network and community, hey, where should I go for X, Y, and Z? So it's still incredibly valuable.
Oh, I could not agree more, I was like, I know, like she knows marketing and branding. Like, I know we're totally going to see eye to eye on that. But I think it's one of those that, my audience needs to hear time and time again, because we spend so much energy and effort on, let me try to, title this thing and do SEO stuff that will make something just pop and go viral. Or let me have this one big, amazing guest on and it will change everything. And some of those work and some of them don't. But I think at the end of the day, like constantly nurturing that relationship with your audience, that relationship with your network can absolutely help. Actually, on that point, we have just so many different dynamics that have shifted over the last few years, especially with all the things that have happened in the world.
Right.
And I'm curious if you have any tips for networking or meeting new people that are in your industry, or maybe like trying to accomplish just the same things, or just motivated people. Cause I feel like that sometimes is like, it's hard to find those people that are motivated.
Yeah, it's super hard. I'll just be really honest. I've struggled with that in the past of just, and still sometimes too, where do I find the right people? I'm in Austin, so I just did South by Southwest and went to a bunch of different events and had a great opportunity networking with different just people all over the world, which is fantastic. I would say like LinkedIn groups are really great. You can get in there, you can understand people's different niches, have ongoing conversations. I still see a lot of networking sometimes through Facebook groups, maybe not as much on the professional side, but sometimes you still see a little bit of that. But just kind of starting even in the small scale of maybe you're like, I'm overwhelmed, I don't want to go in person yet, I don't feel comfortable doing that. Try LinkedIn groups. I think that's a really, really valuable tool. And they're always providing content that's really supportive in those different areas. And then might sound really dumb, but I've used Eventbrite and I've just like typed in a topic and literally have scrolled in my area just to see if there's anything I can attend. I know my team has done that too. And just like what's local and what makes sense for me to potentially be at, or what organization should I join that is going to help connect me with the right people to have ongoing support and mentorship or conversations. So networking post COVID has been hard. It's like hard to get back out there and remember kind of how to do it, and what do we go to and what makes sense, and trying to find the right just connections to help support you along the way.
Yeah. Well, you are the perfect person to have on today, because I didn't even know there were LinkedIn groups. So I was today years old whenever I learned about LinkedIn groups. I did not even know, because again, to your point earlier, I don't always engage and interact with my audience on LinkedIn. They don't, they're there, but it's not the majority of my audience. So I hope that you just gave like a nugget of wisdom to people that are listening, that are really trying to hit that more professional, industry driven crowd, because that is super, super helpful. Very helpful.
LinkedIn is great. I could talk about LinkedIn all day, because I think a lot of people are like, oh, well, I have a job that I love, I don't need a new job, so why would I be on LinkedIn? I'm like, it's so much more than that now. It's such a great tool. So I would talk about it all the time, because I personally think it's the best social media platform out there for generating the best results.
Well, on that note, because I know that you work with a lot of brands and you work with a lot of like personal brands, thought leaders, and then you work with like actual corporation type brands. So I'm curious because I know this is a selfish question. We'll just throw that one out there. I'm looking at, because I have a profile on LinkedIn. And then at one point I was like, oh, I need to create a page for myself, even though I operate as a personal brand. And then and just being really full transparency, I kind of abandoned it and I was like, yeah, it's there, but
Yeah.
I don't do anything with it. But what do you see works best on LinkedIn?
Yeah, so company pages do not perform great, but they're really important to have for SEO. It's got
Okay.
really great free organic SEO. It's good to keep it updated. It keeps it fresh. And it's good for the personal brand to share it. But your personal brand on LinkedIn should be the main driver. And so that's why we work with these executives at these corporations and organizations to be the thought leader and the driver where the corporate brand comes alongside it. Because what we have found is the trust in organizations is at an all-time low. It's no one trusts them. No one finds value in that anymore. And it's so much harder to get someone to kind of cross over into that conversion where you're just kind of like, well, I'm posting, I'm doing all these things. Why is nobody buying my stuff? Well, people trust people and want relationships, and they want to feel connected to an individual. So how do you put that person out in the front in that thought leadership? And that's why we love LinkedIn, because there's so many good valuable tools on there. LinkedIn newsletters are great. LinkedIn's really doubled down on that. And you don't have to post every day. You can actually write copy that's valuable. And video works great too. So we're seeing a lot of the traditional pieces on LinkedIn still work and still make a difference. It's that audience that's there wants very meaningful and quality of content versus you posting every single day just to get ahead. That's not that platform. And I think that's why it makes such a huge difference, especially with executives and different industries like that.
I mean, I wasn't prepared for the masterclass in LinkedIn today. This is so good. This is so, so good because like I said, it's not the platform that I'm always on. So I think that you've really thrown out some incredible tips and strategies that, I mean, I'm going to go try them. Like whenever we get done, I'm going to go be like, okay,
I can't wait.
Enhance this. And I'm going to be like, Nichole, look, this is what happened. Here's
please
everything.
Send it to me.
Yes. Well, but I'm thinking now back to my different experiences on LinkedIn where, okay, this is like the elephant in the room, right? Like somebody sends you a DM and you're like, if I accept this, it's going to be a pitch. Like, I just know it's like, hey, we have this in common or so like, it's always trying to make that personal connection. And then there's immediately a pitch. And so most of the time, like I got to a point where I was just like, I'm just not going to connect with anybody, like unless I actually know the person and have met them. So do you have any personal experience or tips with dealing with that? Yeah,
I have a great tip for that. Don't accept people that you don't actually know. Like, I firmly believe that, unless you like have like, if you really do see like a second or third connection or something that, you know, that's directly tied to, or maybe you've heard someone talk about them or something like that, or maybe we're along lines of, you know, that they're a business opportunity, but don't accept everyone. You can actually change your connect button to follow. Yeah. So that reduces a lot of that kind of incoming spam, essentially is what it is. And that's what we tell all of our people. If you don't know them, don't accept them. Don't feel obligated to accept them. You're going to get 1,000 requests. You know, treat it like a normal, like maybe old school Facebook platform. You don't want a bunch of connections and people that you don't know, that don't provide any value to your relationships. You want to keep that, you know, sacred for where you do want to follow. But, you know, switch that button over and still build your community. If people are wanting to connect or they find value in your content, which is what we hope, just change the button and let them still, you know, prioritize the follow versus that. I check my DMs, but I don't respond to everything. It just kind of depends on what it is. A lot of that's sponsored or sales or
exactly.
It can be overwhelming. So I like to come in with a very organic strategy to that of authentic relationship building. And that's how we look at it.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And I think that, again, these are all really good tips because that is totally what I've been doing. I'm like, man, I don't really know that person. And I know it's coming right after. If I hit accept, it's coming. So nope, just check
them and make sure that you're not missing out on something. But I very much cautiously look into, okay, what makes sense to approve and what doesn't.
Yeah. That's so good. Well, I want to switch gears for a second and actually, we could still stick on LinkedIn for a second, but I know that there's people that are listening who, again, maybe a little bit into their journey, but they're probably on the side of, the first year or two of content creation and putting their stuff out there. When do you recommend introducing paid advertising? Because I know that your company, like y'all have rock stars that are specialists in SEO and paid and different areas of getting people in touch with your specific brand. So I'm curious, your client specific brand.
Sure.
But I'm just curious, when do you recommend people start to evaluate those decisions? Is it a case by case, or do you have any other tips for that?
It is case by case, but I'll tell you, probably like 9 times out of 10, we're solely focused on an organic strategy.
Okay.
We, paid advertising makes sense for product marketing, stuff like that, which we don't do as much of. We are more on the personal thought leadership side. We may do it for, growing email lists. We do a lot of quiz marketing. So sometimes we run ads for those, especially for an upcoming book launch or big campaign. And we do run ads for that. That's usually Facebook and Instagram where we run the most ads. LinkedIn ads are very expensive. The last conversation I had with someone from the LinkedIn team, basically they said, if your minimum is under $4,000 a month, don't waste your time.
Wow.
And so we're very cautious with that. A lot of the people we work with don't always have that kind of budget. If they do, does it make sense? Is it going to actually drive results? So we just very much are, what can we get the most value out of and bang for our buck? And there's, if you kind of go through, I've seen it work really well for downloads. Like if you have a white paper or you're trying to schedule a demo call, if you have like a software, I've seen that work on LinkedIn pretty well. But if you're just kind of breaking out into the thought leadership space, focus on providing quality content and it'll grow over time. You don't need to spend a bunch of money for it. On Facebook, Facebook is pay to play. And if you're just starting for the first time, if you just launched your own page, you're probably going to have to pay to get it to grow. Instagram is kind of getting to that point too, unless you are really committed to producing a lot of video content. It just, I had one client who she is like a rock star who built her audience organically. I mean, like 20,000 just very engaged people. And she didn't pay for it. She didn't pay for that. She didn't boost posts. She didn't do any of that. And we would post one thing for her and it would just blow up and take off. And she's brilliant, but she, nurtured her audience so genuinely. She commented back all the time. She engaged very thoughtfully. She put in the work and spent the time to build this very committed community. I mean, like we literally would post something to download, instantly everyone downloaded it. It was just, and I told her, I said, don't ever spend ad dollars. Like don't ever do it because Facebook will turn off the funnel. They'll figure out that you will spend money. And then all of that glorious organic reach right now that you have goes away. So it very much varies. And, product marketing, of course, you're going to have to do some kind of ad, but if you're just looking to really expand your thought leadership, I'd focus on organic really first and then maybe dabble with it if you're trying to grow an email list or something along those lines.
I think that like you can't hear them, but the whole audience, like everybody listening is clapping right now. They're like, thank goodness.
Sigh of relief.
Thank goodness. Like their shoulders just relax. Like, oh my gosh, like this is music to my ears because it's really what I love to talk about too, is like having that organic strategy with SEO and really, and you've said it so many times, but community and engaging and talking to your audience, growing your email list, like doing these things because they last. I think that that's like the most important thing that I really like try to get across to people is it lasts because it's authentic or it's a real connection and not just, oh, cool. That was, the 15 minutes of fame and then it's gone. But I mean, on that note, I'm thinking about, people that are listening. One of the growth strategies that we talk about is guesting on other podcasts or going on, live on someone else's, YouTube channel or something like that. And I'm curious, do you have any specific tips on how we can showcase that? So maybe as they're getting their own platforms up and ready, they start guesting on other people's podcasts. how can they really capitalize on, using that media or presenting it in a way that builds their authority?
Yeah. So we call that press remarketing in-house for us. That is by far what we see some drive the biggest growth is remarketing those opportunities. So if you're being a guest or you had a contributed article in Forbes, whatever it may be, remarketing those efforts is so important. And you don't just do it once. You do it like 3 or 4 times over, and you don't have to do it all in one week because that's overwhelming, but spacing that out, letting the, opportunity that you spent an hour to sit down and talk with someone, share it a few times. There's multiple things that you can take away from it. A few ways we love to do that. We love to do audio clips, like pull 30 seconds of just a digestible piece for someone to kind of get intrigued by, to go listen to the rest of it. Same with video. If, they have a video piece of that as well, especially for YouTube. And then let that be the driver of your content. You're building that, like you said, authority by association. You're getting logos to put on your website of opportunities that you've been in, and you're creating trust by talking about your expertise. It's the best way to grow your audience and your business because you get to talk about it. And people get to know you and connect with you and engage with you. And that's what this whole thing for us is. So we love press remarketing. We let it drive mostly everything we do because we just see so much value in those results. And it also helps with other things like SEO. You're going to see your name pop up on Google better because you remarketed that opportunity and helped drive it more and more so more people click on it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Like it's so fascinating to me how, what used to feel so impossible is now, like, I think that podcasting is a lot easier today than it was several years ago. So getting or doing interviews, like the technology's getting better. And it's just, come on, everybody's used to Zoom now. At the end of the day, you can get on a Zoom call and record something and turn it into content gold if that is your strategy. But I just think that it's so interesting to see the landscape kind of move and shift. And I'm curious, what are you excited about? Like, you see all these new AI is the buzzword and ChatGPT and all these things. And is there anything specific that you as a branding professional, like, you get really excited about?
I actually am excited about ChatGPT now that you say that. I think it has it's scary too, because it is brilliant and it does have a brain, which is a little weird. Anytime you chat with it. For anyone who was on AIM back in the day, it gives me Smarter Child vibes, which may be a throwback for a few people, but that definitely is what it feels like, where you can just kind of talk to a robot. But yeah, I think it's going to help, agencies like ours and individuals create content more efficiently, starting with it. It's not perfect, but even just typing in ideas and it can, spit something out, and then you have a base to manipulate it, to make it sound like you, or maybe you're not if it's hard to start from scratch. So I love that that's happening and kind of changing the game, in social and in digital. It changes every week for us on some things. So, we're very flexible and we have to be, on our game of understanding what's changing in the industry. TikTok, I have no idea what's about to happen. We don't work with a lot of it. It's, that's not really where a lot of our clients' target audiences are. But I think for me, people are finally doubling down on personal branding and thought leadership and see the value. I don't feel like we're speaking a different language anymore. I feel like people get it. I feel like people understand that it has to be done to drive business at this point. And so that conversation for us has gotten a lot easier because people are like, yeah, I know I have to do this. I don't necessarily want to do this, or I'm overwhelmed by what this looks like, but I know I have to do it. And I trust, whoever to help lead me through it. And that for me is the best part, because we're not having to kind of go through, okay, you really have to do this. And I know some things are working for you right now, but it's going to change. We see it changing, and that change is here. Yeah. So let's now talk about, while you being the executive, this is your role. You should be driving this. And I love that. And I love that there's so much more buy-in now. It's really fun and exciting in all of our opportunities, just working with different people.
Yeah, it's really funny because whenever you said that we're not speaking a different language anymore, like I was transported back to 5 or 6 years ago when people were like, no, we don't do it that way. Like it needs to, you need to be under an umbrella company. You need to be under something else. Like it was, even if you got to start a new company, you don't put your own name out there. You don't put, krystalprofit.com, like you do something else. And it's so funny because I just felt like I just like totally went back in time when you said that. And it's so true. And I'm
people
grateful.
were so scared. People were so scared to put their name on anything. And there's still some fear in that today, obviously, but it's, you have to build your own identity and your own platform and your own understanding and message of who you are. It's just, it's where we're at. I love it. I love that it shifted to that point.
Yeah. Oh, well, I actually have to tell you something funny. I didn't tell you this before because I was like, okay, I'm going to bring this up. I have mentioned this one book. Okay. This one book more times than any book I've ever mentioned on this podcast. And it is The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. Can you please tell everybody your connection, like Zilker Media's connection to this? Because I'm not joking, Nichole. Like I'm not just blowing smoke. That is the one book that has, it's changed everything in my life, in my business. I reread it every single year because it's so good and because it's short. Let's throw that in there. It's super short. It's not like this 500-page book. So can you tell everybody how your company is connected to that book?
Yeah, we helped with the book launch. I don't even remember, how long that's been.
I don't know what year it was.
Came out. And our founder and previous CEO, Rusty Shelton, he's still very much involved with the company. He had his first iteration of Zilker was called Shelton Interactive, and they worked a lot on that book. I was not there, so I wasn't here at the, for that side of it yet. But it is part of our roots and history. And one of obviously the most successful book launches, just because that book probably could have marketed itself. It's so fantastic. But I know our whole team felt very fortunate to be part of that launch, and just kind of working through the marketing side of it on the back end. But I specifically wasn't there for that, so I can't speak too much to it. But it is part of our roots and history.
Yeah. Well, I love just bringing it up because these are the type of thought leaders and the type of people that are, again, motivated. They're driven. They are really looking to make a big impact. I think about Jon Acuff too, like one of my favorites. He is, first of all, hilarious. He's so funny, but he just
human, just a wonderful human being.
Yes. Like he just, it's so down to earth and real. People throw around the word authentic and raw and all these other things. And it's like, no. Like if you're not following Jon Acuff on Instagram, what are you doing? Go follow him immediately. Like how he shares about his family and like, but this is like the thing about the thought leadership part of it is the real struggle. And it's not just the shiny headshot in a suit, just looking great on it. I was going to say Instagram, but LinkedIn, but it's really like those down to earth qualities that really connect us. So can you talk a little bit more about that? Like how you work with your thought leaders to bring that personality in, but without giving away all that personal stuff? Cause I think that that's where a lot of my listeners get freaked out. They're like, I want to share my podcast, but I don't want people to know where I live. I don't want them to know where my kids go to school. And they're really just trying to understand where to draw that line.
Yeah. And it varies for our people. Some people are like, I love sharing my kids and our family vacation pictures. And some people are like, I don't want my children's face on there at all. And we respect that. We totally get that. I'm not a mother yet. So I actually don't even know where I personally would land on some of that. And I am all about social and digital. And, I don't even know what I would do in some of those situations. So we totally understand that it varies and, you have to kind of just roll with that. We do strategy interviews when we start with a client. So we really just get in the weeds of about an hour or two and get to know them. Tell me about your story. Just let them free talk and what brought you here. And, if you're physician, we work with a lot of physicians. what is your favorite patient story that just sits in the back of your mind? And like, we get to hear them talk about who they really are and who they aren't at the same time. Sometimes we even interview spouses in some situations because no one knows you better like than your spouse. And you kind of get that unique perspective. And then we use that to formulate how their message and how their content is going to sound. On the personal side, the personal content performs better than anything else. It never fails. Like, if they post a picture at Christmas morning, it will outperform anything that we ever post. It just is time and time again. And if you have an animal, just share it. You may think it's not professional, but share the animal pic. It does so much better than anything else we do, even on LinkedIn. Like, if you're working from home and, I have a cat, I have 2 cats, but I have one that is my COVID kitty who just is very attached to me because we got her during quarantine. She lays in my lap the whole time I work. Like, she is with me, she's attached to me. And I post about her all the time. I'm like, this is my work from home buddy. People love that stuff. And so, be sensitive to what you are comfortable sharing with your family and your children. But if you're celebrating a wedding anniversary, share it. And you can share it on LinkedIn. Like, people want to know you on LinkedIn too. Yeah. I promise. It's not just about what you've accomplished to make yourself sound like this rock star professional. I'm sure you are, but people want that humanizing content so much. So really, just if you have a meaningful moment, share it. If you're comfortable with it, birthdays, anniversaries, your kid painted something for the fridge and it cracks you all up and you put it up there, share it. Just like, be in the moment on some of that stuff, especially if Instagram is your top channel. Instagram stories, just kind of doing that throughout the day, you kind of start to build that habit and routine. And it's what builds the audience the fastest. And I love it. I think the personal stuff is the best.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I think, again, like, you keep coming with the great strategies and the great tips. And I know that there's somebody like their hand is hurting because they're just like taking so many notes right now, because these are the questions I get asked all the time. So thank you so much for being generous with all of your information, because this is so helpful.
I'm so glad.
I want to move into a different segment, which we have. It's 3 rapid fire questions, and I promise they're not embarrassing. They're not something you're going to be like, Krystal, you did not warn me about this beforehand. Like, what is going on? Okay. So are you up for that?
I'm up for it.
Okay. So the first one is, what piece of advice would you give to a brand new podcaster or content creator?
Yeah, I'm probably repeating myself a little bit, but just be yourself. Know who you are. Don't be scared to be that person. And don't try to replicate and be something that you just see out there that you think will work. Just, if you are authentically who you are, people will engage with that and connect with that, because that's what people want, is that authenticity.
Yeah. So good. So good. Okay. My second one is, what is the dream podcast that you would love to be on? And if you had a podcast, who is your dream podcast guest?
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh. I actually don't know. I know I should have an answer to that on the podcast front. I mean, this is probably just more on the personal side. I listen to this podcast called The Audible. It's a sports podcast. I submit questions all the time and they do answer them for me a lot. It's mainly around college football. So I would love for Bruce Feldman and Stuart Mandel, who I adore, to let me be a guest on that, to just share my expertise about college football. That's my side passion. So probably that one. I listen to it just religiously. So, and then for a guest for me, I'm probably gonna stay in like the sports realm just to talk about it, because I feel like I could talk sports for hours. So I would probably pick some like athlete that I've loved my whole life.
Throw it out there. Just pick a name.
There's so many. Gosh, I would probably go back and like interview maybe like an old Dallas Cowboy, like Roger Staubach or something like that, just to have a really cool conversation. My dad would love that. He would be there.
Yeah, that's super fun. I love that. We're a Cowboys house too. So
nice.
Yeah,
yes.
totally understand.
Love that.
Okay, my last question. Do you consider yourself a perfectionist?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I definitely am. I'm a perfectionist and a control freak. When it comes to my work and the thing and my relationships and all those, yes. Cleanliness, my house is a mess. So that is where I'm not. But everything else in my life, like at work, I'm very organized. I'm a perfectionist. I got to have things just really put together. And then I come home and my husband will tell you that the house always is a mess because it's me. So it's not him, it's me. But my work self is very much a perfectionist.
I love it. I love it. Oh my gosh, Nichole, this has been so much fun. And like I said earlier, you have just offered so much valuable information. And I know that there's somebody listening right now that's like, I really want to learn more about how to work with Zilker. So maybe you can just give us a little bit about, you've shared how you work with clients, but maybe what that would look like if somebody's listening and they're thinking about taking the next step or learning more about what your company could do for them.
Yeah. Well, zilkermedia.com has all of our information. It's ZILKER, like the park. We're not near the park, but like the park. And we do, personal branding and thought leadership, and that can look various ways. We'll do some audits, some strategy work. And then we can consult with you ongoing to help support you as you roll out that strategy and take ownership of the execution side of it, or we can do it for you. And we do PR as well and ongoing pitching. So there's various things and we kind of customize based off of what that need is. Or if someone has a book, we do book launches too still. So you can head over to our website. You can email me as well. It's Nichole, Nichole at zilkermedia.com. We have a LinkedIn checklist coming out soon for a free just kind of giveaway to help people out too. It should be on our website, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. So just to get started.
Awesome. Yeah. And we will put all the links to those in the show notes. And I actually, when I first landed on y'all's website, I loved y'all's quiz. You had brought up quizzes earlier and I was like, like it was so cool. So can you tell a little bit about that? Because I've had people ask me about quizzes and I'm kind of a novice. I've like played around with them a little bit, but I mean, is that something that you have seen that performs really well?
It's the best way to grow an email list because we customize and create them ourselves. So some people like to write them, especially if they're maybe like a lawyer or healthcare provider with that knowledge. But a lot of times for even our book clients, we'll take the book, we'll help develop a strategy, then we'll write the quiz, develop it. And it comes, with 3 emails. So you can kind of jump into certain categories. Every time you take the quiz, if you change up your answers, you're going to get a different email. And then nurturing emails beyond that. And it's the fastest way to provide value where someone's very engaged and intrigued. And so we do a lot of that. And we do have the brand power score on our website if you want to kind of take the quiz and see where you land.
Yeah, super cool. So again, we're going to link to that in the show notes because I love to hear that y'all designed it in-house too because it's really pretty.
Thank you.
It's really pretty. I've seen some really terrible quizzes and y'all's is really nice. So I'm going to be like, go look at this. Like this is a great, like outstanding example.
We have a wonderful creative team. So I will pass along that compliment to them.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today, Nichole.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It was a great conversation.
I told you it was going to be a masterclass in LinkedIn. And I am not going to lie, I was a little selfish. And I asked a lot of questions and I was like, okay, what should I do about this? And how should this work? And I'm so appreciative. Again, thank you so much, Nichole, for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom. And I want you to reach out to Nichole and Zilker Media if you are looking for professional experts that can help you grow your business, get more traffic, use the powers of content marketing and digital media to grow your business. Because like I said earlier, they are fantastic. And I love it when people are so inspired and passionate about marketing and branding, and They stay up with the trends and they know what's going on. Because what I find is there's a lot of people that will claim, oh, I'm a social media expert and I do this and I do that. But in reality, all they do is they know how to run ads manager. That's it. They don't know how to help you run successful campaigns. They just know, oh, I can use the levers and hit the right buttons in the back end to where I'm not wasting you money. That's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to be strategic. We are trying to use your content to really elevate all of the other incredible things that you're doing with your business, what you're doing with your thought leadership, and what you're doing to grow the authority that you have in your industry. So like I said, everything is going to be linked in the show notes. I would love for you to go check out Nichole and Zilker Media and go connect with her and see what their company can do for you. But that's all I have for you today. So make sure you are subscribed or following the podcast wherever you are listening. I would love it if you would take a screenshot where you're listening to this episode, tag me, tag Nichole, and let us know what you thought about today's episode. But that's all I have for you today. So as always, remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere. Hey, Profit Podcast listeners. Thanks for sticking around to a little bit after the episode to hear this special message because I want to hear from you. We are starting a new segment called Fan Mail Shoutouts, and I want to hear from you and I want to hear your questions. What do you want to know? What questions have you been dying to ask me? So here's how to make this happen. Go to the app where you're listening to this podcast right now. Go there. I'll wait a second. Okay. Now, once you're there, you're going to see a hyperlink at the top of the episode description that says, send Krystal a text message. And that's all I want you to do. Send me a text. It could be casual, informal. It could be totally anonymous. Or if you want, you can include your name and the name of your podcast or content wherever you are creating, and I will give you a special shout out in an upcoming episode. So again, go to the show notes for where you're listening to this episode right now, and it will say, send Krystal a text message. And I cannot wait to hear from you and give you a shout out in an upcoming segment of Fan Mail Shoutouts.